My first day of retirement should have been the start of a new chapter, but it quickly turned into a nightmare I never saw coming. After decades of hard work, I had finally sold my construction company for $28 million. At 65, I was supposed to be enjoying my time. No more board meetings, no more late nights planning projects, just the peaceful, comfortable life I had earned. Or so I thought. Before we continue with this shocking story, make sure to subscribe to True Family Revenge Stories and turn on notifications so you never miss an incredible tale like this one. And don't forget to comment below and tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from our viewers. I had invited the family over for a small retirement party at my home. The house was nestled on a quiet hill outside of town, with views of the rolling hills that stretched as far as the eye could see. My wife, Helen, had spent weeks organizing the details, ensuring everything was perfect. The guest list was carefully curated, with friends and family who had supported me throughout my career. Among them, of course, was my son Jack and his wife, Victoria. Victoria had always rubbed me the wrong way. From the day she came into Jack's life, I felt something was off. She seemed polite enough on the surface, but I could tell there was something beneath that calm exterior. It was a gut feeling I couldn't shake, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the joy of my retirement and the future ahead. As the evening unfolded, I found myself feeling a sense of contentment. The laughter of friends and family filled the air, and the music played softly in the background. But as the night wore on, I began to notice something strange. Jack had his arm around Victoria, smiling at me and congratulating me on the sale of the company. But there was a tension in the air, something in the way she was looking at me. Just before the toast, as everyone gathered around the table, I saw it. Victoria, with a small, nearly imperceptible motion, slipped something into my glass. My eyes narrowed. The movement was so smooth, so subtle, but I had seen it. I had to act quickly. Before anyone noticed, I quietly swapped my glass with my brother-in-law's, who was standing right next to me. His glass was untouched, so I grabbed it and moved mine discreetly into his spot. I wasn't sure exactly what Victoria had put into my drink, but my instincts told me it wasn't good. My heart raced as I waited for the toast to begin, trying to keep my composure as I casually took a sip from the glass I had just switched. Everything felt surreal. How had I ended up here? After everything I had worked for, was this how my retirement was supposed to go? My mind raced, but I kept my face calm. The last thing I wanted was for anyone to see through my exterior, especially Jack and his wife. As the toast started, I raised my glass along with everyone else. I could feel Victoria's eyes on me, watching closely, expecting me to drink from the glass I had been given. But I kept my focus steady. I watched her closely, trying to read her expression. The smile she wore seemed too practiced, too perfect. It made my skin crawl. I didn't say a word as I made my way through the crowd, taking care to stay away from her gaze. It wasn't long before the room began to buzz with conversation, people moving from one group to the next. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I had been in business long enough to know when someone was playing a game, and it felt like I was being set up. I excused myself from the party, retreating to the study where I could think. As I stood by the window, looking out at the quiet night, I realized that this wasn't just about money. It was something deeper, something personal. I could feel the weight of it in my chest. And just as I was starting to process what had just happened, I heard someone call my name. It was Helen. Her voice was full of concern, and she wasn't alone. She was with Victoria. I started paying closer attention to Kelly's behavior, every little movement, every glance. She always acted so sweet, so polite around me, but there was an edge beneath that polished exterior. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it was like a second layer, a more calculating version of her that I hadn't seen before. The next family event I attended was a small dinner at their house. Not too many people, just close family. I had barely stepped through the door when Kelly welcomed me with her usual warm smile, but this time, there was something different in her eyes. It was almost like she was sizing me up, looking for any signs that I was onto her. I tried to push the thought away, but the more I thought about it, the harder it was to ignore. Tim was there too, but as usual, he wasn't paying much attention to anything other than his phone. It had always been that way since he and Kelly married. He was a good man, hardworking, but in the last few years, it felt like he was drifting away. He didn't seem to have the same fire in his eyes when we talked about the company, the plans for his future. He seemed content just floating along, letting Kelly take the lead on everything. And I'm sure she enjoyed it. She always knew how to control situations, manipulate the right people, and make herself the center of attention. That night, Kelly made sure I was seated at the head of the table, a gesture that seemed kind enough. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something sinister lurking behind her sweet gestures. I noticed the way she kept glancing at me when I reached for my drink, almost like she was watching for a reaction. My nerves were on edge, but I didn't show it. I couldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing I was on to her. As we dug into the meal, I kept an eye on her every move. Tim was talking about work, and Kelly was pretending to listen, though I could tell her focus was elsewhere. Every time she stood up to refill her glass or to make a move in the kitchen, my heart raced a little. It wasn't long before she returned with another drink for me, her eyes gleaming with that same cold precision. I didn't hesitate this time. I knew exactly what was happening, but I kept quiet, pretending to enjoy the evening, keeping my suspicions buried under a mask of civility. Just like the last time, I took a sip of the drink, trying to act normal. But as soon as the liquid hit my stomach, a wave of nausea hit me hard. I stood up quickly, trying to hide my unease. Tim looked at me with concern, but Kelly was the one watching me most closely. I could see the way her eyes flicked to my face, gauging my reaction. She knew what she had done, but she didn't expect me to be this aware. "Are you feeling okay, Dad?" Tim asked, his voice thick with concern, but his gaze already flicking back to his phone. I forced a smile, trying to steady my breathing. "Just a little dizzy," I lied. "I'll be fine." I excused myself from the table, leaving them to continue their meal, and made my way to the bathroom. My head was spinning, my stomach in knots. This wasn't just dizziness. This was deliberate. Kelly was trying to poison me. It was the only explanation that made sense. I didn't know why, but I knew I couldn't let this continue. I needed to act fast. I wasn't going to be a passive victim in this scenario. I went back to the table after a few minutes, pretending to be fine. Kelly, of course, acted like nothing had happened. She greeted me with that perfect smile of hers, but I saw the glimmer of satisfaction in her eyes. She was playing a dangerous game, and she thought she was winning. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I was going to turn the tables on her. The next step was simple. I had to get the evidence. But I wasn't going to confront her directly just yet. No, I would be smarter than that. If I were going to catch her in the act, I needed to observe her and figure out how to expose her without giving her a chance to cover her tracks. It took all my willpower to stay composed. I didn't let on to anyone, not even Tim, that I was on to Kelly. I couldn't risk her knowing I had figured it out. The next time we had a family gathering, I planned to make my move. The poison she was slipping into my drinks wasn't just a physical threat. It was a betrayal, an attack on everything I had worked for, everything I had built over the years. And I was not going to let her get away with it. Over the next few days, I kept my distance, thinking and planning. I avoided having any meals with Kelly, just to be safe. But I wasn't going to let her ruin my retirement. I'd worked too hard for too many years to let someone like her tear it all down. And if there was one thing I knew about myself, it was that I wasn't the type to back down easily. I had made a life out of working in construction, overcoming every obstacle that came my way. This was no different. If I had to outsmart my own daughter-in-law to save myself, that's exactly what I'd do. One evening, after dinner, I found my opportunity. Kelly was in the kitchen preparing something for dessert, and Tim was in the living room watching TV. It was the perfect time to act. I quietly moved to the counter where she had left her bag, just as I had seen her do the last time she served me that drink. I opened the bag carefully, knowing this was my only chance. And there it was. The same small packet, the one I had found earlier, was still hidden in the bottom of her bag. I froze for a moment, my heart racing. I had the proof I needed, but I couldn't act on it just yet. I needed to plan how to confront her, how to make sure this didn't just blow up in my face. One wrong move, and she could manipulate the situation to make me look crazy. I wasn't going to give her that chance. I needed to be calm, calculated, and in control. It was time to turn the tables, once and for all. The next day, I felt the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I had the evidence, But I knew I couldn't act rashly. I couldn't just walk up to Kelly and accuse her. No, I needed to approach this with a strategy. I had seen too many people in my life make mistakes by letting their emotions get the best of them. This was no different. If I was going to catch her, I had to wait for the right moment and play it cool. That evening, Kelly invited me over for dinner again. This time, Tim had gone out of town for a few days, so it was just the two of us. It was the perfect setup for her. She thought I wouldn't notice anything, that I'd let my guard down with just her. But I wasn't foolish. As I walked into their house, I made sure to keep my composure. Kelly greeted me with her usual sweet smile, as if everything was normal. But the tension in the air was thick. She couldn't hide it completely. There was a slight unease in her voice, a tremble in her step as she showed me to the dining room. She was nervous, and that made me even more determined. "Dinner should be ready in about 30 minutes, she said, her voice a little too high-pitched. "I thought we could have a glass of wine to start. You know, just the two of us." I hesitated for a moment, then smiled, knowing this was exactly what she wanted. She thought I was going to fall into her trap, drink her wine, and let the poison take its effect. But I was ready for her this time. I knew exactly what I was dealing with, and I wasn't going to let her win. "Sounds good, Kelly. I'll just wait here," I said, casually sitting down in the living room. Kelly went to the kitchen and came back with a glass of wine for me. She was overly enthusiastic, almost too eager, as she handed me the glass. I took it from her and held it in my hand, pretending to admire the wine. The slight hesitation in her movements didn't escape me. She was waiting for me to drink, to fall for it. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Instead of taking a sip, I set the glass down on the table next to me. "You know, Kelly," I said, my voice casual but firm, "I've been thinking a lot about everything lately." Her eyes narrowed, but she kept her smile. "Oh, about what?" "Well," I continued, letting my words hang in the air, "I've been thinking about my company, my sale, and the future." I paused, watching her closely, and I realized something. I don't think I can trust everyone who's been around me these past few years. Her expression faltered just for a split second, but she recovered quickly. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice low, almost too quiet. I leaned back, casually studying her, letting the tension build. "Well," I said, my tone slowly turning more deliberate, "I've been wondering who's really on my side. Who actually cares about me for who I am and not just what I can give them." Kelly's smile faded just slightly. "What are you talking about?" she asked, trying to keep the conversation light, but I could see the flicker of unease in her eyes. "I'm talking about loyalty, Kelly," I said, my eyes locking onto hers. "Trust and respect." For a moment, the room was silent, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Kelly was trying to maintain her composure, but it was clear she was rattled. She couldn't keep up the charade any longer. She knew I was on to her, and she knew she had to act fast before the whole thing unraveled. "You're being paranoid," she finally said, laughing nervously. "Nothing's wrong. Just relax and enjoy your wine." Her words felt like a challenge, a dare for me to drink, to fall into her trap. I smiled and shook my head. "I don't think I'll drink just yet," I replied calmly. "Maybe we can talk more while I'm waiting for dinner. I've got a lot on my mind." She didn't respond, but the nervous energy was palpable. It was only a matter of time before she cracked. I had to give her credit, though. She was good at hiding her true intentions. But she wasn't good enough. As we sat there, waiting for dinner to be ready, I could tell Kelly was growing impatient. She kept glancing at the clock, then at the wine glass, then back at me, trying to figure out how much longer she could keep up the pretense. When the food was finally ready, Kelly moved to serve the dinner, still glancing over her shoulder at me. I could tell she was trying to gauge my next move. I could feel the tension building in the room like a pressure cooker waiting to explode. But I wasn't going to give in. Not now. Not after everything she had tried to do. As she turned to bring the main course to the table, I moved swiftly, switching her wine glass with mine. She didn't notice, too focused on the task at hand. I could feel a sense of triumph rising within me. She had no idea that I was one step ahead. Dinner was served, and I acted like nothing was wrong. I praised the food, commented on the wine, and even laughed at a few of Kelly's jokes, though they felt forced and fake. I could feel her watching me closely, waiting for me to take a sip, to show signs of weakness. But I didn't. I waited for the right moment. After dinner, she cleared the plates, and that's when I made my move. As she walked to the kitchen to fetch dessert, I quickly grabbed the wine glass I had switched earlier and poured the contents into a small vial I had hidden in my jacket. I knew the poison would still be detectable, even after it had been mixed with the wine. Now I had my evidence. The next step was simple. I would confront her with the proof, and then I would make sure she paid for what she had tried to do. I had the vial, the proof, and now all that was left was the confrontation. I had to be careful. This wasn't just about exposing Kelly for what she had done. It was about ensuring that her betrayal didn't go unnoticed. It was about making sure justice was served in the most public and definitive way possible. I waited for the right moment. I could see Kelly moving around the kitchen through the open door, humming to herself, acting as if everything was perfectly normal. She had no idea what was coming. I could almost hear her thoughts. She was probably already planning her next move, assuming that her little plot had worked and that I would simply slip away unnoticed. I walked toward the kitchen, the vial safely tucked in my pocket. As I stepped into the doorway, Kelly looked up with a bright smile, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit her. "Everything okay?" she asked sweetly, wiping her hands on a towel. I took a deep breath, locking eyes with her. "Actually, no, Kelly. Everything's not okay." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but she quickly regained her composure. "What do you mean?" I pulled out the vial and held it up in front of her. This is what you put in my drink last night. I watched you, Kelly. You thought I didn't notice, but I was paying attention the whole time." Her face went pale. She froze for a moment, her eyes flicking to the vial, then back to me. She swallowed hard, trying to maintain her composure, but it was no use. The guilt was written all over her face. You can't prove that," she said, her voice shaking slightly. But there was no denying the panic in her eyes. "I don't need to prove anything. I saw you. I know what you did. I know what you tried to do. And now I have the proof." Her hands started to tremble, and she took a step back. "This is crazy. I didn't do anything. No," I interrupted, my voice cold and firm. "You're not going to talk your way out of this one, Kelly. You tried to kill me. For my money. For everything I've worked for. You thought you could get away with it, but I'm not the fool you thought I was." Kelly's eyes darted around, as if looking for a way out. She was trapped, and she knew it. Her breathing became shallow, and I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out how to manipulate her way out of this situation, but there was no way out. She was cornered. "I didn't mean to," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean for it to get this far. Tim doesn't know, I swear. I needed the money. I was desperate." "You don't get to play the victim here, Kelly," I said, my voice steady but filled with an anger I had never felt before. "You don't get to lie your way out of this. What you did was cold, calculated, and cruel. You tried to take my life." Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of fear. She had seen what I was capable of, and now she was terrified of the consequences. "I'll take this to the police," I said, watching her carefully. "You'll answer for this, Kelly, one way or another." She took a shaky breath, her body racked with sobs. "Please, don't do this. I'll lose everything. My family, my life. Please, I'll do anything." I stood there for a moment, watching her break down, and for the first time, I saw her for who she truly was. A manipulator. A liar. Someone who would do whatever it took to get what she wanted, even if it meant destroying the people closest to her. But I couldn't let her get away with it. Not after everything she'd done. "No," I said firmly, shaking my head. "You've made your choice. And now, you'll face the consequences of it." I turned around and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her behind, her sobs echoing in my ears. I could hear her calling after me, begging me to forgive her, but I didn't turn back. I had done the right thing. I had stopped her, and I had exposed her for who she really was. The door slammed behind me as I stepped outside, taking in the quiet of the evening. I felt a sense of calm wash over me, knowing I had acted swiftly and decisively. It wasn't easy, but I had done what was necessary. For my safety, for my peace of mind, and for the long overdue justice. As I walked back to my car, I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. I had made it through this ordeal, and I had come out stronger. But as I looked at the vial in my pocket, I knew one thing for sure. Kelly's betrayal was just the beginning of the changes that were about to come. If you were shocked by Kelly's betrayal and the lengths she went to, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to True Family Revenge Stories, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let me know, and don't forget to click the box to listen to the next story. Thank you for watching.